I used to believe that life was just a long chain of random events, things that happened for no particular reason, moments that simply pass by. But over time, and through countless conversations with people searching for direction, I realized something important. The world around us is not silent. It constantly communicates with us through signals, signs, and small coincidences that often go unnoticed. My journey toward understanding these signs started with a simple question. What if the world is trying to tell me something? Not in a mystical or dramatic way, but in a quiet, steady whisper, the kind you only hear when you slow down enough to listen. I began by observing myself. Every morning, before I checked my phone or opened my laptop, I gave myself 1 minute, just one, to ask what I really want today. Not what I should want, not what others expect from me, but what I genuinely feel drawn to. And surprisingly, that 1 minute became the strongest anchor of my day. I realized how often people choose goals that aren't truly theirs. Someone studies engineering because it's stable. Someone else picks a career because their family expects it. Some chase success simply because everyone around them does. But when a goal doesn't come from within, it drains us slowly, like a battery running in the background with too many unwanted apps open. As I talked to more people, I noticed a pattern. Many didn't actually know what they wanted. They knew what was smart, what was safe, what was reasonable, but not what was theirs. And when you don't know your inner voice, you end up following someone else's. The turning point for me came when I met a young man who had spent years trying to live out a dream that wasn't his. His parents wanted him to become a scientist, and for a while he tried his best. He studied, he pushed himself, he followed the path that seemed right. But everything inside him resisted, not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. He felt tired for no reason, distracted, unmotivated. Until one day, after yet another sleepless night, he understood that the reason he felt empty wasn't failure. It was misalignment. His goal simply wasn't his. Eventually, he left that path and pursued acting, something he'd been passionate about since childhood, but never allowed himself to consider seriously. And for the first time, his life felt like it belonged to him. His energy returned. His curiosity returned. His joy returned. Not because the path was easy, but because it was his. This story taught me something crucial. Freedom begins when we want what we truly want, not what we are expected to want. It sounds simple, almost too simple. But for many of us, it's one of the hardest things to practice. We grow up being told what's good, what's proper, what's worth pursuing. And gradually, without noticing it, we stop hearing our own voice. We hear the voices of teachers, parents, influencers, society, but not ourselves. And that's exactly when signs start appearing. Not to punish us or scare us, but to guide us back to our real path. Sometimes these signs look like small obstacles, unexpected delays, forgotten items, missed opportunities. Sometimes they appear as coincidences, repeated phrases, repeated thoughts, repeated feelings. The world nudges us gently at first, and, if we ignore it, a little stronger next time. The key is learning to notice, to slow down, to ask, is this happening for a reason? Or am I just not listening? And that is where my journey truly began. The more I paid attention to the world around me, the more I realized that signs don't appear out of nowhere. They show up when my inner and outer world stop matching, when I push myself towards something that my deeper self quietly rejects. And the first place these signals appear is not outside, but inside. I began to notice small, internal reactions. Sometimes it was a strange heaviness in the morning, even if I slept well. Sometimes it was a feeling of resistance before a meeting or a project, even if everything looked perfect on paper. At first, I ignored these reactions. I told myself I was tired, stressed, or just overthinking. But over time I understood, These tiny feelings were early signs that I wasn't walking my true path. The outer world speaks the same way, only louder. For example, on the days when I forced myself into decisions that didn't feel right, I would experience an unusual chain of small disruptions. I'd oversleep even though my alarm was set. I'd forget something important. I'd miss a bus by a minute. Plans would fall apart for no obvious reason. One event could be random, but a whole sequence? That made me pause. I started to track these patterns, not obsessively, but with curiosity. And I found that when several unlikely things happen in a row, all pointing to the same moment or direction, it's usually not coincidence. It's a signal that my subconscious and the world around me are in disagreement. There's a principle I learned. When my goal is wrong, the world becomes heavy. When my goal is right, the world becomes clear. This doesn't mean that the right path is always easy. It simply means that even when it's difficult, it feels honest. It feels meaningful. It feels like effort with purpose, not effort against myself. I also discovered that the subconscious mind communicates using images, emotions, and instincts, not logic. Logic is fast. It says this is smart, this is safe, everyone does this. But the subconscious is quiet. It speaks in subtle impressions, a warm feeling when something feels right, or a quiet discomfort when something feels wrong. To understand these signals better, I started visualizing my future. Not in a magical or unrealistic way, but simply creating mental pictures of the life I actually wanted. I imagined how I would wake up, where I would live, who would be around me, what I would spend my time on. When these images matched my inner voice, I felt a sense of calm. When they didn't, my mind resisted, like trying to solve a puzzle with the wrong pieces. As my understanding grew, I realized something important. Signs appear the moment you move away from your real path. They're like small reminders, gentle corrections. And if you ignore the gentle ones, the next ones become stronger. I remember one specific period of my life when I tried to work with someone who, deep down, I knew wasn't the right partner. Nothing dramatic happened. There were no conflicts. But every time we scheduled a meeting, something went wrong. I would get sick. He would forget the time. Documents would get lost. Trips would be delayed. At first I thought, this is bad luck. But eventually I understood. It wasn't bad luck, it was a sign. My subconscious didn't want that collaboration. It knew what I didn't want to admit. And the world reflected this mismatch in every possible way. This was the moment I learned one of the most valuable principles in my life. If several unrelated things keep going wrong in the same area, stop forcing it. Something inside you is trying to protect you. Once I accepted that, everything became clearer. Every sign, every small coincidence, every unexpected disruption, they all formed a pattern that guided me toward more honest decisions. This changed the way I view the world. I no longer rush through life ignoring small signals. I listen to them. I analyze them. I let them guide me, not control me, but guide me gently, like a compass that always points back to my true direction. And that's when the real transformation began. Once I understood how signs work, I realized that the most powerful way to align with them is to create a clear inner picture of the life I truly want. Not a vague dream, not a checklist of achievements, but a vivid image, something my subconscious can actually understand. The subconscious doesn't speak in words. It speaks in symbols, emotions, and visual impressions. So I began forming future scenes, almost like snapshots from a movie. I pictured the place where I would live. I pictured how my mornings would feel. I imagined the people around me, not specific faces, but the atmosphere of the relationships. I imagined the work that would motivate me to get out of bed, even on difficult days. As I built these images, something unexpected happened. I began to feel a sense of direction. Not pressure, not urgency, direction. A quiet pull forward, as if my inner world finally had a map to follow. And once the map became clearer, my hidden resources started waking up. I realized I had skills I'd forgotten about, connections I hadn't used in years, ideas I had once abandoned because they didn't seem practical. It was as if someone opened a drawer inside my mind and dusted off everything I had stored away. These talents weren't new. They had always been there. But without a clear purpose, they were like ornaments stored in a box, colorful, beautiful, but unused. This is when the metaphor of a tree became meaningful to me. Imagine a room full of decorations, lights, ornaments, stars, ribbons, all packed away in boxes, scattered, forgotten. On their own, they clutter the space. But the moment someone brings in a tree, everything changes. The lights suddenly have a place. The ornaments begin to shine. The star finds its position at the very top. Nothing is wasted, nothing is random. Every piece becomes meaningful. That tree is your goal. A true goal, not something chosen for approval or convenience, but something aligned with your inner voice. When the goal appears, your resources light up at once. All the skills, interests, memories, abilities you've collected throughout your life suddenly make sense. They find their place. They begin to work together. This was my experience. As soon as I defined my authentic direction, my entire inner world reorganized itself. I felt clarity where before there had been confusion. I felt motivation where before there was exhaustion. I felt confidence where before I only had doubts. And the outer world responded too. Opportunities one never expected began to appear. People with similar interests entered my life. Conversations happened at the perfect moment. Plans fell into place with surprising ease. It wasn't magic, it was alignment. When inner and outer worlds match, everything flows smoother. This doesn't mean the right path is always effortless. But the effort feels natural, not forced. Even challenges feel purposeful. When you're moving toward your true goal, the world feels lighter, not because it removes obstacles, but because you no longer fight against yourself. I started to understand a simple but powerful truth. The world becomes supportive when your goal is honest. The world becomes heavy when your goal is false. Every time I tried to chase a goal that wasn't mine, life felt like walking through thick mud. Everything slowed down. Everything resisted. Even simple tasks felt exhausting. But when I chose a path that matched my inner image, I felt a sense of flow. Even when things were difficult, I knew I was moving in the right direction. It felt like all parts of me, thoughts, emotions, instincts, memories, abilities, were finally on the same team. This inner alignment is what turns signs into guidance rather than warnings. When the direction is wrong, signs stop you. When the direction is right, signs support you. And that's when life truly begins to change. By the time I reached this point in my journey, I realized that knowing your true goal and seeing the signs around you is only the first step. The real challenge and the real power comes from learning how to act with awareness, how to make decisions that are in harmony with your inner voice and the subtle guidance of the world. Every decision became a test of alignment. I started asking myself one simple question before taking action. Is this really mine, or is it someone else's expectation? If the answer felt uncertain, I paused. Not in fear, not in hesitation, just in observation. I let the question settle in my mind and waited for a clear, intuitive answer. Often, it came in the form of a small image, a feeling of lightness or tension, or a repeated thought that I couldn't ignore. These were the signs guiding me. I also learned that life only moves forward when you move toward something, not simply away from something. You can't escape unhappiness, boredom, or discomfort without direction. You can only move toward clarity, joy, purpose, and energy. This principle changed the way I approach challenges. Instead of running from situations I didn't like, I asked myself where I truly wanted to go. The answer became my compass. Visualization continued to be my most powerful tool. Every morning, I pictured my ideal day. I imagined the work I wanted to do, the people I wanted to spend time with, the experiences I wanted to have. Sometimes the images were simple. A quiet morning with a book and coffee, a meaningful conversation with a friend, a moment of laughter outdoors. Sometimes they were bigger, traveling to a new country, starting a project that inspired me, achieving a personal milestone. These images weren't dreams to chase blindly. They were anchors for my subconscious mind, signals for my behavior, and guides for my choices. I also learned to pay attention to subtle nudges from life. Small coincidences, unexpected delays, or repeated patterns of events were rarely just random. When multiple unlikely things happened together, missing a train, losing a key, forgetting an appointment, I began to see them as a way of the universe saying, "Stop. Look. Think. Are you really heading in the right direction?" The probability of all these small events happening at the same time was so low that ignoring them would be foolish. They became my checkpoints, not obstacles, but guidance. Over time, I noticed a dramatic difference between moving in alignment and moving against myself. When I followed my authentic path, energy flowed naturally. Opportunities appeared when I least expected them. People who mattered came into my life, and connections that were once dormant suddenly became active. Even challenges felt manageable because I was moving with purpose, not against resistance. My internal resources, talents, skills, creativity, relationships began working together like a well-coordinated team. Everything I had learned, stored, and experienced suddenly made sense, as if my life had finally clicked into place. But none of this works without attention and awareness. Signs only help if you notice them. Goals only guide if they come from your authentic self. And decisions only bring progress if you move toward something meaningful. Every day, I practice asking, what do I truly want? What direction feels right? What signs am I noticing? It's a constant dialogue with myself, with life, and with the unseen currents guiding me. The most important lesson I've learned is simple. Life responds to honesty. When you are honest with yourself about your desires, your intentions, and your goals, the world aligns to support you. When you are dishonest, or when you chase someone else's path, life resists. It's subtle but consistent. The signs become louder, the obstacles heavier, and the energy fades. So I keep practicing. I keep noticing. I keep visualizing. I keep listening. And slowly, step by step, the path becomes clear. The direction becomes unmistakable. And every small coincidence, every repeated pattern, every moment of resistance becomes a guide, not a curse, not a punishment, but a signal that helps me stay on course. Ultimately, the journey is about learning to trust yourself, to trust the signs, and to trust the process. Life doesn't hand you clarity on a silver plate. It gives you moments, images, feelings, and nudges, all waiting for you to interpret them. The more you listen, the more you understand, the more you act in alignment with your inner truth, the easier and more fulfilling the journey becomes. And that is the path I continue to walk every single day.